Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph and we will be learning today Miras Hashem part of Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis and part of Samach Amud Aleph. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tefillin. We pick up today on Nun Tes Amud Beis, Siman Lamed Daled, Sif Gimel, second line down in the Shulchan Aruch. We have been discussing the difference between Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. So since we've had a little bit of a break in the shiur here, let me just give a brief recap, the difference between Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin and Rashi Tefillin. The question is, what is the proper order of the four parshiyos in the Tefillin? According to Rashi and the Rambam, which is the prevalent minig in Klal Yisrael, the proper order is the order in which the parshiyos appear in the Torah HaKadoshah. So the first parsha is Kadesh. The second parsha is V'haya ki Yiviyacha. The third parsha is Shema Yisrael. And the fourth and final parsha is V'haya im Shemaya. According to Rabbeinu Tam, the third parsha and the fourth parsha are flipped, and the order becomes Kadesh, V'haya ki Yiviyacha, V'haya im Shemaya, Shema. Now, we learned previously in the Shulchan Aruch and in the Mishnah Berurah that this whole machlokes is only negeya to the way the parshiyos appear in the Tefillin. So in the Shel Rosh, the difference is the four individual parshiyos. How do you line them up in the four individual batim of the Shel Rosh? According to Rashi, the first bias has Kadesh, the second bias has V'haya ki Yiviyacha, the third bias has Shema, and the fourth bias has V'haya im Shemaya. According to Rabbeinu Tam, the third bias and the fourth bias are flipped, so that the third bias has V'haya im Shemaya, and the fourth and final bias has Shema Yisrael. However, while that's in the Shel Rosh, in the Shel Yad, in which all four parshiyos are written in one piece of cloth, again, we have the same machlokes. According to Rashi and the Rambam, the way the four parshiyos appear on the cloth that's in the Shel Yad is the first amud on the cloth. The first column is Kadesh, the second column is V'haya ki Yiviyacha, the third column is Shema, and the fourth column is V'haya im Shemaya. According to Rabbeinu Tam, you flip the last two amudim on the cloth so that the third amud has the parsha of V'haya im Shemaya, and the fourth and final amud has the parsha of Shema Yisrael. However, when it comes to the writing of the parshiyos, everybody agrees that the parshiyos must be written in the order in which they appear in the Torah HaKadoshah, so that even according to Rabbeinu Tam, you have to write the parsha of Shema before you write the parsha of V'haya im Shemaya. And where that becomes very interesting is in the Shel Yad, where again, all four parshiyos are written on one piece of cloth. What the Sefer has to do to write Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin is, he has to skip the third amud, the third column on the cloth, leave it blank, go to the fourth and final amud, write Shema Yisrael, then go back to the third amud and write V'haya im Shemaya, so that even though V'haya im Shemaya will appear before Shema Yisrael, it will have been written after Shema Yisrael. So here we have the great difference between Rashi and Rambam Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and we have learned that Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, according to Shita of Rashi and Rambam, are puzzle, and Rashi and Rambam Tefillin are puzzle according to the Rabbeinu Tam. They're not both kosher. One is kosher, one is puzzle. And we learned the minig to put on both in order to be mekayim divrei shneim, and we had in great detail in the Mishnah Berurah, where the Mishnah Berurah says that when you put them on, you have to make sure that you are putting them on only bitam safek, right? In the words of the Mishnah Berurah, Mishnah Berurah said, one second. Just looking for the words here in the Mishnah Berurah. Oh, come on. Yeah, so the Shulchan Aruch on Nun Chesam and Beis and Sif Beis, the Mechaber said, "V'yechavein b'hanachosam ba'oisam shehem aliba dehilchasa ani yoytze yidei chavasi." Person who puts on both should have kavana that the one that is emes al pi halacha, that's the one I want to be yoytze with, and the other one is kiritzuais ba'alma, because you don't want to be putting both of them on l'shem mitzvah. One is kosher, one is pasul, and we could run into problems of both Baal Tosef and Baal Tigra. Now, I just remembered now that I had said that I would do a biur halacha. So maybe we should take a look at that right now. If you take a look on Nun Tes Amud Beis, biur halacha divra maschel yaniach shel Rabbeinu Tam. This goes back on the Mechaber. The Mechaber on the top line of Nun Tes Amud Beis said, Yoniach shel Rabbeinu Tam b'loi bracha. You should put on the tefillin of Rabbeinu Tam without a bracha, and you should recite the first two parshiyos of Kriya Shema, Shema and V'haya im Shemaya. Says the Chavetz Chaim over here in this biur halacha, nearly. It appears to me, says the Chavetz Chaim, that gam bazet tzarich lizar lechavein she'enoi oisekein rak mishum sveika. Says the Chavetz Chaim that it's very important that when you put on those Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, right? So this is going back on the Mechaber, who says that if you can't put on the Rashi Tefillin and the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin both at the same time, you should put on the Rashi Tefillin during davening, you put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin after davening without a bracha. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you have to be mechavein that you're only doing this mishum sveika. When you put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, it's important to have kavana, not that you're putting it on l'shem mitzvahs tefillin, to be mekayim the mitzvah of tefillin. No, you're putting it on mishum sveika. You understand that there's a suffix, there's a machlokes, Rashi and the Rambam on one side, Rabbeinu Tam on the other side. So you're putting on these Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin that, again, there's a suffix. So if the right tefillin are the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, I should be yoytze with the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. But if not, it's only ritzuos ba'alma. Why, says the Chavetz Chaim? Ubazel l'kuli alma loy over al Baal Tosef u'Baal Tigra. By doing this, you protect yourself that you're not over either on Baal Tosef, by putting on extra tefillin, or Baal Tigra. De'im yechavin stam bazel l'kayim mitzvahs haseder tefillin. Because let's say you go ahead and you put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, not with the kavana that there's a suffix, and you're putting on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin mitam suffix, that just in case the halach is like Rabbeinu Tam, you want to be yoytze. But if not, then you're not putting it on l'shem mitzvahs tefillin. Let's say you don't do that. You put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin to be mekayim the mitzvah tefillin. Then, says the Chavetz Chaim, you're running a risk. Hagam de'ein bazeh mishum Baal Tosef, even though you're not going to be over on Baal Tosef, and the reason for that we explained in the previous shiur, because since the Rashi Tefillin are one entity and the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin are a separate entity, you're not over on Baal Tosef. Baal Tosef is if you add on to the mitzvah. So if you take, let's say, a shel roish, which is supposed to have 4 batim, and you make 5 batim, so then you're putting on a shel roish of 5 batim instead of 4 batim. You're being over Baal Tosef. If you write 5 parshiyas in a shel yad and you put on a shel yad with 5 parshiyas, you're being over Baal Tosef, because the mitzvah is to put it on with 4 parshiyas. You're adding on. You're putting on 5 parshiyas. But if you put on Rashi Tefillin, and then you take off the Rashi Tefillin, and then later you put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, you're not being over Baal Tosef. You're not adding on to the mitzvah. So says the Chavetz Chaim over here, even though you're not running afoul of the Isser of Baal Tosef, Al Kol Panim, continues the Chavetz Chaim, Shema be'emes hadin karashi. Maybe the halacha is like Rashi. Utfillin elu, and these Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin that you're putting on now after davening, psulim, are puzzle, the hechlif parshiyoseh. They're puzzle because you flipped around the 3rd parsha and the 4th parsha, and according to Rashi, they're puzzle. Ukamaisha kasav arosh v'hator. V'nimtza the over bazeh al bal tigra. Now, you're not going to be over on Bal Tosef, but you're going to be over on Bal Tigra. Tahaloi mavur b'smag loisa say shin samachei teha'oisa sholosh toitafais b'tfilin over al Bal Tigra. V'achidami de kavasei. The Smag writes, let's say we've been discussing Bal Tosef. So he said, you put on a shel rosh with 5 batim, you're over on Bal Tosef. How about if you put on a shel rosh of 3 batim? If you put on a shel rosh of 3 batim, you're over on Bal Tigra. Bal Tosef is you're not allowed to add on to the mitzvahs. Bal Tigra is you're not allowed to subtract from the mitzvahs. So the same way you're over Bal Tosef if you put on a shel rosh with 5 batim, you're over Bal Tigra if you put on a shel rosh with 3 batim. Now, if you put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and the halach is really like Rashi and the Rambam, well, in that case, you took the 3rd parsha and the 4th parsha, and you flipped them. Now the tefillin are puzzle, but not only are the tefillin puzzle, the haloi ein lo rak shtei parshiyos shekvuin b'mkaiman. They're puzzle because the parshiyos are in the wrong order. But not only are they puzzle, you're also going to be over on Bal Tigra. Why are you over on Bal Tigra? Because these tefillin that you're wearing only have 2 out of the 4 parshiyos in the proper place. So it's like you're putting on tefillin with 2 parshas. You're putting on a shel yad that only has 2 parshas in it, because only kadesh and v'hayaki v'yacha are in the proper place, and you're putting on a shel rosh that only has 2 parshas in bayis number 1 and bayis number 2. Kadesh and v'hayaki v'yacha are in the right bottom, but shema and v'hayim shemai are in the wrong bottom, according to Rashi and the Rambam. So it's as if this shel rosh only has 2 parshas. So you're over on Bal Tigra. And says the Chavetz Chaim, ve'ein lechalik, and you might want to make an argument and say, no, this is not Bal Tigra. Ve'ein lechalik, the hasam al kol panim shalosh kisherin hein, v'yesh al zeh rak shem migareya. You might argue, and you might say, okay, the Smag says, if you put on tefillin that only have 3 parshas, you're over on Bal Tigra. Maybe over there you're over on Bal Tigra because you're putting on tefillin that have 3 parshas instead of 4 parshas. So the mitzvah is 4 parshas, and you put on tefillin with 3 parshas, so you subtract it from the mitzvah. That's Bal Tigra. Masha'enke kan, but that stands in contrast to our case over here. Al yidei shekfuim ktsas parshas ba'ktzitza shaloi b'mkaiman, noimar da ktzitza kulei mikri ktzitza besula ve'en oleh Hashem migareya. You might want to make an argument, and you might want to say like this. You might want to say, in the Smag's case, I took the mitzvah and I subtracted from it. The mitzvah is 4 parshas. I took out 1. I only put on 3. So that's Bal Tigra. But in our case over here of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, in contrast, in comparison to Rashi Tefillin, I didn't subtract from the mitzvah. I'm wearing tefillin that have 4 parshas. The problem is that I flipped 2 of the parshas. But now that I flipped 2 of the parshas, it's not even tefillin. They're puzzle. It's not pshat that I put on tefillin, but I subtracted from the mitzvah by taking out 1 parsha. No, they're b'chalal not tefillin. 2 of the parshas are in the wrong place. It's not pshat that this is tefillin that is 2 parshas. No, these are puzzle of tefillin. So maybe over there is not Bal Tigra. Says the Chavetz Chaim zeh einoi. That's not a valid argument. The haloi sham bevadai ein ala katzitza shem tefillin klal. Because in the Smag's case also you could make the same argument. You would tefillin that only have 3 parshas. They're puzzle. So it's not pshat that I'm putting on tefillin and just I subtracted a parsha. No, it's puzzle. Yet the Smag says that that's Bal Tigra. So to over here it's Bal Tigra. The haloi kaimel on the arba tetafan smakvin zeh v'afilu haki nichlal zeh b'lav gloi Tigra. So what's the Chavetz Chaim saying so far? He's saying if you put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin and you have kavana to be yoytze the mitzvah of tefillin with Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, as opposed to having kavana that I know there's a suffix, I know there's a machlokes Rashi and the Rambam on the one hand and Rabbeinu Tam on the other hand. So I'm putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin mitam tzafik. That just in case the halach is like Rabbeinu Tam, I should be yotzah like Rabbeinu Tam. But I understand that if the halach is like Rashi and the Rambam, then it's not l'shem mitzvah. If you do that, you're okay. But if you put it on l'shem mitzvah, so now if the halach is not like Rabbeinu Tam, says the Chavetz Chaim, you're being over on Baal Tigra. Why are you being over on Baal Tigra? Because since two of the parshas are in the wrong order, it's as if they're not there. And if they're not there, then you're putting on tefillin with two parshas. You put on tefillin with two parshas, you're over on Baal Tigra. He said, you might want to make an argument that doesn't constitute Baal Tigra. Why? Because it's not that you're putting on parshas with only two. You're not like you're putting on tefillin with only two parshas so that you're subtracting. No, these leather boxes that you're putting on your head maybe aren't tefillin at all because they're puzzle. Because two of the parshas are in the wrong order. Says the Chavetz Chaim, that's not a valid argument. Because if you put on tefillin that only have three parshas, also they're puzzle. And yet you see that the Smag says you're over on Baal Tigra. Continues the Chavetz Chaim here what he says. Ulehepech ein lechalik. You might want to make sort of the opposite chilik between the Smag's case and our case. The sham gara me ikar tefillin mashe ein ken kan. Maybe you would want to make an argument and you want to say that over there I subtracted from the mitzvah. Here I'm not subtracting from the mitzvah. All the parshas are there. All the parshas are there. Kadesh vayukiv yachash ma vayim shemaya. They're all there. The psul is that they're in the wrong order. But the psul isn't that I subtracted from the mitzvah. So maybe it doesn't constitute Baal Tigra. There's a Enoi. He says that also is not a valid argument. Echad tekevin shelo yanicha b'mekayim hevi gamkin k'moshe chisra. Since you went ahead and you put them in the wrong order, it's as if they're not there. Now he says over here v'oid, and he goes into another raya that's not a valid argument, but that's complex. It goes into Hilchas Kachim, believe it or not, and I'm not going to go into that now. But at least I wanted to cover this Bir Halacha to show you the complexity of the question over here. It's not pashut. You see somebody putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Oh yeah, sure, yeah, I want to be becoming the mitzvah l'chol hadayis. You have to be careful why you're putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. You have to realize, according to the Chavetz Chaim, I think it's very possible that Rav Moshe argues. I think Rav Moshe argues on the Chavetz Chaim and has a little bit of a different take on it. But the Chavetz Chaim's take is that the kavanah you have to have is there's a suffix lidina. There's a suffix. There's Rashi and the Rambam on one side, there's Rabbeinu Tam on the other side. The prevalent minig of Klal Yisrael is Rashi and the Rambam. So I put on Rashi and the Rambam, I put on L'Shem Mitzvah Tefillin, and I make a bracha on it and everything else. When I put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, I put them on without a bracha, and I have kavanah that it's only mitzat suffix. I'm only putting them on just in case the halach is like Rabbeinu Tam, so I want to be yotzei the mitzvah according to Rabbeinu Tam. But I understand that if the halach is not like Rabbeinu Tam, then das heißt nicht tefillin. I'm not putting on tefillin, l'shem mitzvah. Because if you do put them on l'shem mitzvah, you run the risk of being over Baal Tigra. I remember seeing in a tshuva, I didn't find the tshuva now. I have to look back in the Igris and see if I could find the lashon in the tshuva. I remember seeing a lashon in the tshuva where Rav Moshe Zecher Tzadik L'Vracha writes, not that it's a suffix. He says there's no suffix. The halacha is like Rashi and the Rambam. There's no suffix that the halacha might be like Rabbeinu Tam. No, the halacha is like Rashi and the Rambam. So we put on Rashi Tefillin, L'Shem Mitzvah Tefillin, and we make a bracha, and that's how we mekayim the mitzvah. Why is there an Indian to put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin? So I remember a lashon that heyois, that there's a shita from one of the Gedolei Rishonim, the Rabbeinu Tam, who had a different hanhaga in Hilchas Tefillin, that he put the parshas in a different way. So we put on Tefillin like Rabbeinu Tam, sort of lechvoid that shita, because it's such a mitzvah chamura, mitzvah tefillin, and it's g'dolei rishayim, the Rabbeinu Tam, but that it's not even a suffix. Not even a suffix. And we don't put it on l'shem mitzvah tefillin. It sounds very pelodic. I have to find it inside. I have to find the tshuva. Okay. Now that we covered that, let's take a look. Second line down, Nun Tesam and Beis Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Lo Yasekein Elamisha Muzuk Umufursam Bachasidus. This hanhoga of putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, says the Mechaber, is only for Misha Muzuk Umufursam Bachasidus. Somebody who has a chazaka, and it's well known Bachasidus. Bachasidus doesn't mean as a trakta streimel. That's not what Chasidus means. Chasidus means that this person is muksik, that he follows halacha lifnim mishuras hadin. That he's so careful with halacha that he always goes the extra mile. Not just that he chapped on this chumrah of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. That he does other chumras as well. That's who should be noyeg Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. So says the Mechaber. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Tes Zayin, about halfway down in the Mishnah Berurah, and then to Tes Amid Beis. The lashon of the Mechaber is Lo Yasekein. He should not do so. What's he referring to? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Hainu afilu yirtza lanicham rak achar tefillah. He means over here even to put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin at home after davening. In other words, in Sif Beis, the Mechaber had given us 3 different possible ways of putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. One was you put on 2 shel yads at the same time, and then you put on 2 shel roishes at the same time. The second one was you put on 1 shel yad, then the other shel yad, then 1 shel roish, and then another shel roish. And the third one was the way it's done nowadays. You put on Rashi Tefillin during davening, you put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin after davening. On that, says the Mechaber, Lo Yasekein, even that third minig of putting on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin after davening, Lo Yasekein elamisha muslikum first of Chassidus. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, the Kosav Aber Hativ, Beish Echad Shayanoigel and Yich Tefillin Rabbeinu Tam La'achar Tefillah B'Farhesya B'Fnei HaKohol. The Ber Hativ speaks about a person who had the minig that after davening in shul L'Fnei Am Ve'eda, he put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. And the Ber Hativ wonders, Mechzi ki yuara. Is that somebody who's looking like a balgaiva? Mechzi ki yuara. He's making himself look like a person of great stature. Because look at me, I'm chashiv, I'm putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Pasak b'tshuvas Maharash Halevi, the Mechzi ki yuara, v'tzar shivatam unagoy. The Tshuvas Maharash Halevi wrote that yes, that's Mechzi ki yuara, and he should be mevatel the minig. He should not put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin l'ftei am ve'eda. V'chein kosa b'tshuvish was Yaakov Chelik Beisim and Memdalid, sha'afilu in miktas oisin, even if there are some people who put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, yesh bai mishum yuara, there's an Indian of Mechzi ki yuara, this is something to be done privately. Certainly, if you have another choshev who puts on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin at home privately, and you go in front of him and you put on your Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin b'farhesi in front of him, v'adai mechzi ki yuara ayin sham, that would be a problem of mechzi ki yuara, and he says ayin sham in the Tshuvas Marash. I'm going to address this further, but let's first do Ois Katan Yud Zayin. Ois Katan Yud Zayin says the Mishnah Berurah, what does it mean? Somebody that's muchzak umufursam b'chasidus. Like I said, it doesn't mean as a trakta streimel. So what does it mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah, shekeven sha'olam noyagin karashi. First of all, what's this problem of mechzi kiyura? The problem is because since the Welt is noyag like Rashi, nira kiyura misha chayshish lahakmar latzmei bazeh. Somebody who gets up and decides that he's going to do different than the rest of Klal Yisrael, and he's going to be chayshish v'shitas Rabbeinu Tam, then it's mechzi kiyura. Im einoi muzik shemakmer al atzmai gam kein b'shar dvarim. Unless he's recognized as somebody who is always particularly careful with mitzvahs, so he's always going the extra mile, so then fine, he can go the extra mile with Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin as well. So when we walk away from Sif Gimel over here, in the Mechaber and in the Mishnah Berurah, it becomes very strange to see people putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin in shul, either during davening or after davening. But the truth is, if you take a look at the Aruch HaShulchan, the words of the Aruch HaShulchan are as follows. V'gam zeh shekosav habeis Yosef. As far as what the Beis Yosef, the Mechaber, writes, De'ein lasais kein elamisha muchzak u'mefursa b'chasidus, while the Mechaber writes that this minig of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin should be reserved for Misha Musak u'mefursa b'chasidus, ha'idna nowadays nispashta b'kama medinois. The minig has become widespread in many regions. Shemanichin Tefillin de Rabbeinu Tam, that people put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and therefore ve'ein bazeh yuara, there is no problem of mechzik yuara, ve'yachol kalechot lases kain, and everybody could feel free to undertake this minig, ve'tavai alav bracha, and bracha should come to them for being mekayim the minig of putting on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. I would also refer you to the Aruch HaShulchan here, near the end of Siman Lamed Daled, several paragraphs over here, where the Aruch HaShulchan really tries to address the very common question of, how did this happen? Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. I mean, come on. Everybody was putting on Tefillin from the time of Har Sinai. Open up the Tefillin and see what's inside. How did it come out, this machloikis of Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin? Very fascinating discussion here in the Aruch HaShulchan. It comes out that it's really based on Divrei Kabbalah. He says even that the Rambam, he says that the Rambam, where is it over here? He says that the Rambam writes that he opened up Rav Hai Goyen's Tefillin, and Rav Hai Goyen's Tefillin were like Rashi. 1 second. No, where is it? All right, I'm not finding it right now. I'm sorry. Oh, here it's earlier. V'amru ki ha'ga'onim paschal es ha'tefillin shel Rav Hai v'iksuva al ha'seder shekasafti b'chiburi. The Rambam says that the Ga'onim, the later Ga'onim, opened up Rav Hai Goyen's Tefillin, and they were written according to the Shitas HaRambam, which is Shitas Rashi. Even though they quote from Rav Hai, that Rav Hai paskin like Rabbeinu Tam. But he brings down over here a Medrash Nelam, he brings down a Zoyar from Parshas Pinchas, just to paraphrase. He says that the Rashi Tefillin are more appropriate for Zman Hazeh. Zman Hazeh, you have the Parsha of Vahaya Im Shamaya at the end, because we live in a time of Hester Panim, and the Parsha of Vahaya Im Shamaya, we're in Golus, has in it Hishamer Lecha, Hishamru Lachem, Pen Yifta Lavavachem, Vesartem Vavaditem, Elikim Acherim, and it says Va'avadetem mehera me'al ha'aretz ha'toiva she'anoichi noisen lefnechem. So it's more appropriate for Zman Hazeh for the parsha of Vahaya Im Shamaya to be the final parsha. But la'asid lavai, Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin will be more appropriate, because Lasid Lavai, we have the pasuk in Zechariah, Bayomahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmai Echad. And therefore, Lasid Lavai, Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin will be more appropriate, because the last parsha will be Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The inference over here is that over the course of the Doros, Al Pi Kabbalah, different tefillin were more appropriate at different times, and it seems that the Rabbeinu Shalom kind of manipulated events so that people should wear different tefillin at different times. I know that's what I heard from my Rebbe's, many years ago, that he feels that it's mamish a nes that we have Rashi tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because the Rabbeinu Shalom felt that there was a hashpah that was necessary in the world. There's one hashpah of Rashi tefillin, there's one hashpah of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and at different times the Rabbeinu Shalom felt that different hashpahs were more necessary, less necessary. Maybe that's why now it became more nispashet, the minig of wearing Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because somehow that's a hashpah that we need. Okay, let's go weiter. So now we're on the bottom line, Nun Tes Amid Beis, Sif Daled. Lo yoniach shtei azugos bekis echad. If you are noig to wear Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, you should not put the four of them, the two, the Shal Rosh and the Shal Yad of Rashi and the Shal Rosh and the Shal Yad of Rabbeinu Tam, you should not put them in one bag, in the same Tefillin bag. Sha'echad behem hu chayil, because Lamaisa, one of them is puzzle. So one of them is chayil, there's no kedusha. V'asal hanichai bekis tefillin. And why are you putting them in a tefillin bag? Tefillin bag is a tashmish kedusha. It's not meant for divrei chayil, right? You don't put money inside your tefillin bag. So what are you doing putting these tefillin of chayil that have no kedusha in the tefillin bag? Ella rather, says the Mechaber, Yaseh Shnei Kisin, you should make two different bags, V'siman l'chol kis, and there should be a siman on each one, which one is Rashi and which one is Rabbeinu Tam, so that you don't mix them up. So you should not put the Rabbeinu Tam into the Rashi bag, the Rashi into the Rabbeinu Tam bag. It should be very clear which one is the Rashi bag and which one is the Rabbeinu Tam bag. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Yud Ches, Lo Yoniach. You should not put all four of them, the Rashi Tefillin and the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, in one bag. Says the Mishnah Berurah, there's a caveat to this. Umayri, we're talking about a case, Shahuzman Hakis Tchila Rak Ledas Echad Mehem. This is only a problem when you made the bag and you used the bag, either for Rashi Tefillin or Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Then you can't put in the other one. But if mitchila, you knew that you're wearing Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, so you went to the embroidery place and you asked them, I need a big tefillin bag that can hold 4 things of tefillin. I want to put 2 sets in one bag. And you had a bag made to hold Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and you get it, and you put in your Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, that would be okay. Why would that be okay? Because what's the whole problem over here? The problem is if you buy a bag for Rashi Tefillin and you use it for Rashi Tefillin, you put Rashi Tefillin in it, now you gave this bag the Kedusha that it's a Tashmish Kedusha made for Tefillin that have Kedusha. Now you take your Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin and you put Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin in it. Well, if the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin are puzzle, then they're divrei chayil. You're not allowed to put divrei chayil into a bag that's a tashmish kedusha. But if you made the bag mitchila with the intention that it is going to be used for something that has kedusha and something that does not have kedusha, let's say you don't put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin at all. Forget the discussion of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. If you have a bag for Rashi Tefillin, you're not allowed to decide that you want to put money in it. But if when you made the bag, you made it al das, that I'm using this bag both to hold my tefillin and as a purse to keep cash in, and you go ahead and you use it right away, mitchila, you put in your tefillin and you put in your cash, it might not be commendable, but you're allowed to do that. Because you never made this bag with kedusha. You made it al das that you're using it for dvar m'shebek kedusha, and for divrei chayil. So if you make a bag for Rashi Tefillin and Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, it's as if you are masna from the very outset that you're using it for divrei kedusha and divrei chayil. So then it would be okay. That's why the Mishnah Berurah says, when is this true that the Mechaber says you can't put in both? That's only if you made huzman over here, doesn't mean that you only prepared it. Because hazmana lav milsahi. Hazmana, just preparation, does not count when it comes to the question of tashmish kedusha. You need hazmana and tashmish. So he says the Mechaber's case is only if you made it either for Rashi Tefillin or Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and you used it for Rashi Tefillin or Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. Then you can't use it for the other one, because maybe the other one is divrei chayil, and you made this as a tashmish kedusha. You can't use it for divrei chayil. Avalam nasa b'tchila nich b'shneim shari. Ice cutting your test b'kis echad. You shouldn't keep them in one bag. Shel tefillin kidem esayim. Aval b'tika talis mutar la nich shneim afilu heim beloy tik. Many people have the minig that they have a talis zekel. The talis goes in the talis bag, and in the talis bag they put in two tefillin bags. They put in a Rashi pair and a Rabbeinu Tam pair. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's okay. Why? Because even though a talis is a chefetz shel mitzvah, it doesn't have kedusha like tefillin do. It's considered a davar shel chayil in regards to making the bag a tashmish kedusha. That's why you could put stucco money inside your talis bag. You could put a tefillin mirror inside your talis bag, because the talis bag is not considered a tashmish kedusha. So you could put inside in the talis bag, you could put a bag with Rashi tefillin and a bag with Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. One set is kadosh and one set is chayil. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you're also not allowed to switch them around. Like I once saw somebody yarshened tefillin from his father. So he figured, I have a talis bag for my Rashi tefillin. He'll take his father's old Rashi tefillin zekel and he'll put Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin in it. You can't do that, because that tefillin bag was already made for Rashi tefillin and used for Rashi tefillin. Now you can't start using it for Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because maybe the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin are chayil. So you can't switch the bags. Certainly you can't take batim that were made for Rashi tefillin and use them for Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, or if they were used. You can't take batim that were made and used for Rashi tefillin, use them for Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, or the Ritzuas, or the Parshiyos. Or the other way, you can't go from Rabbeinu Tam to Rashi either. But if the tefillin were made and never used, then you could still switch them. Now this becomes tricky, by the way. I just want to point out. Well, no, not really. I mean, for the shalyad it becomes tricky. Obviously, if the shalyad was written as Rashi tefillin, it can't be used as Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because it would be written. If it was written as Rashi tefillin, yeah, well, then you can't use it as Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because it's factually not Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. It would be written in the wrong order. If somebody wore these tefillin even once, l'shem mitzvahs tefillin, and it was set up as Rashi tefillin or Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, Rabbeinu Tam or Rashi, also lachlifan shavachakach, you can't bring it to a cipher and switch it around. Even if you first, you had the tefillin made, you had them made as Rashi tefillin, you put them on as Rashi tefillin, but you had das from the beginning. I'm using it for a week as Rashi tefillin, then I'm going to have it switched around to Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. You're not allowed to do that. Let's say you found ritzuos of tefillin. Okay. I don't know. Were these ritzuos in Rashi tefillin or in Rabbeinu Tam tefillin? I found used ritzuos. I want to use them in my Rashi tefillin. I don't know. Maybe they were previously used in Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. I don't know. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yuchal hanicham leparshia sharashi. You could use them as in Rashi tefillin. The ruba manichan sharashi, because the roiv tefillin are Rashi tefillin. V'anan sfirulon gamkein the Rashi Iker. And not only that, but we also hold that the Rashi tefillin are the Iker umalin b'kodesh. You could take the Ritzuas and you could uplift them from Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin to Rashi tefillin. V'ayin beber heitev u'beber halacha. V'yesh min ha'achrayim shebakil in yoser. There are achrayim that are even more makel in this halacha. Diladidan, they say that according to us, the serving the Rashi Iker, where we hold that Ladina, the halacha is like Rashi. If we only have one set of Ritzuas, we could actually pull them out of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, and lichatchila we could use them in Rashi Tefillin. Avi misha Rashi Rabbeinu Tam also lita b'chagavdi. V'em nizdam and shahitzi kisha Rabbeinu Tam Tchila. What if you're a little sleepy in the morning when you go to Shachris and you're ready to put on your tefillin, and you pull out your Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin before your Rashi Tefillin? Do you have a problem of ein mavirin ala mitzvahs? Do you have to put on the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin first? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yavirein, no, put back the Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, put them aside, and put on the Rashi Tefillin. Kiladidon Rashi Iker, v'lo heavy bazayin mavirin ala mitzvahs. But lechatchila you should take care that this should not happen. But chalamayid, on chalamayid, even those people who wear tefillin on chalamayid, ein lahaniach shar Rabbeinu Tam, you don't wear Rabbeinu Tam tefillin on chalamayid. The reason for that, it seems, is because going back to when we discussed the whole shaila of wearing tefillin on chalamayid, in Divrei Kabbalah, the Zohar writes very, very, very strongly against wearing tefillin on chalamayid. So to go do the chumrah of Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin on chalamayid, even somebody who wears tefillin on chalamayid does not wear Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin. But on Tisha B'av, when we don't wear tefillin in the morning and we only wear tefillin by mincha, then you could put on Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, because it's not pshat that on Tisha B'av we don't put on tefillin at all. On Tisha B'av we certainly have a chiyuv to put on tefillin. Just we put them on after chatzos, because till chatzos the avelus is so strong, and an oval doesn't put on tefillin. But you have a chiyuv to put on tefillin, just like you have a chiyuv on any other day, and therefore you could put on your Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin by mincha on Tisha B'av. Okay, we'll stop over here, and Mr. Hashem continue next time with Siman Lamed Hey. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss of limud HaTorah should be made on God's Klal Yisrael. Rabbeinu Tam Tefillin, Yeshua, Sefurus, Parnasset, should do from all those who need. We should be zeichet to see the BS called Tzedek, B'mher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.